We're out here at Rock Point on a spring day, and it's a little drizzly, which the wildflowers love. And we are out here to look at wildflowers, so it's perfect weather for what we're up to. We're going to read the Rock Point landscape from bedrock to birds. We're going to tell its story, and Tyler's here to help me do that. Tyler, you're the land steward here at Rock Point. What do you do on a typical day?
Yeah, so my role is kind of two-part. I do some land stewardship and then programs as well. And so part of my time is spent more out in the forest, taking care of the trails and kind of tending to the species that are out here. And then the other part is developing some programs. And one of those is a naturalist class called Reading Rock Point.
And that is the Bedrock to Birds framework. It's sort of telling the whole story, you know, and that we'll do that out here, from how the bedrock influences the natural communities and the wildflowers, and all the way up through the human history here on this land. And it's a great framework for teaching about any place in Vermont.
That's right, yeah. And so I took the Vermont Master Naturalist course twice, and after that, yeah, really felt that this place is such a good kind of holistic spot to, you know, cover that whole framework. And so the course is very inspired by Vermont Master Naturalist and has been, yeah, supported by, and we're really grateful to be able to host that out here.
Thank you. It's fantastic. I hear great things about it. And we're going to meet another Vermont Master Naturalist, Lorna Dielentheis, who is an illustrator, just beautiful wildflower illustrations among many other things. She's going to remake the map, I heard, so you're going to update this map, but let's use the one you've got, and can you show us where we'll be walking today?
Yeah, so she's going to help us kind of redo the kiosks, and I think the map will kind of stay similar, but so we're, yeah, just to kind of orient. So we, you know, drove in from Institute Road here, and then we headed down Rock Point Road, and there's a public parking lot here where you can park your car and then walk down the road over the bridge. You head to the left or to the right to get on the trails. We went left here, came down, and then we're at this trailhead right here. And then we're going to take this crossover before we get all the way out to the point there. And that'll take us to Thrust Fault Cove, where there's a really cool geological feature.
I love that feature. I think this place and that feature are really some of the most beautiful things you can see in Vermont, and maybe in the world.
Yeah,
you know,
truly.
It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous landscape. And then we'll leave the Thrust Fault, we'll head up along the cliffs. We're going to end up in the outdoor chapel where we'll meet Kimball, the director of Rock Point, and hear about what the future holds for this landscape. So I'm really excited to do that. Let's go find Lorna.
Yeah, let's do it. First time I've ever seen it the other day.
They are so cute.
Yeah.
They are so cute.
It's a really
Just
beautiful.
those yellow sort of lips on
Yes.
the petals and on the. Hey, Lorna.
Hey!
Wow, you found a nice patch of trilliums.
Yeah, isn't it gorgeous?
It is. I love when they're at all stages. Like there's some that are just opening and some that are wide open. And look at this one just standing up so proud.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And you have been capturing them.
Yeah, I'm working on a little drawing of the beautiful trillium
How
here.
long did it take you to do that?
To be honest, I lost track of time, so you'd have to tell me.
Well, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I have my little hand lens here too, so I can look
Cool.
close
so you can
up.
see structure.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I just love the nodding. I love you got the leaf proportion just so nice too. That's one thing I really noticed between the white and the red is, you know, the reds have much fatter leaves. This is one thing, you know, tell me how drawing works for you to help you see detail. How does it inform your work and your identification?
There's a lot of reasons that I draw flowers, but a big one is that if you're just taking a photo of a flower, you're not absorbing the information at all. You're just kind of taking a snapshot to look at later. But while I'm drawing, I'm having to look so closely at each part in order to draw it accurately that I'm giving myself this beautiful record of this moment in the woods, but
your record is beautiful.
Thank you.
My record might help me remember, but I wouldn't necessarily want to just look at it. So yeah, great.
But yeah, I'm also, the record itself is one thing, but then I'm also putting all this information into my mind as I'm drawing without even realizing it. So
it's so true. And I pulled out Newcomb's. I love using a key to key wildflowers as well, and I've talked about this previously, but you know, it has a nice key that you can go through, but in the process of doing that, you look closely at the leaves and how are they shaped, how many are they basal, are they whorled, you know, and so I feel like I do absorb more of that information, you know, and then when I finally, you know, land on the page that's Trillium, I think I even know which one it is because I've done it a lot. You know, there's the illustration, but I've gotten there through a thought process and through, you know, sleuthing things about it, and I can learn that it's in the lily family and it's an early spring flower, and you know, some of the things I might have observed, but other things I might not know.
Yeah, keying and drawing have that in common, is both of them force you to look really closely at the organism you're studying.
Well, I see that. I mean, that's even why you have the little like, cute
so I bring my hand
lens, you know,
yeah.
is to really see the details.
Yeah, you can look.
Yeah, I find I've done introductory wildflower keying workshops, usually in the summer when you can just pick a bouquet of meadow flowers. I don't want to pick the woodland flowers, but we go through them, and I have people sketch a flower first, and it's, you know, the basic things, you know, the basic petals, and you know, they usually don't include the leaves. You know, it's just a flower, and then at the end, after they've keyed it, I have them sketch it, and suddenly you can see, oh, the petals have dots on them, and oh, they're leaves that are shaped like this, and there's just so much more incorporated into their sketch because they've looked closely at it. So it feels like it comes down to observation.
Yeah, well, and that's a really great example of how important it is to bring together art and science. I mean, these two disciplines are viewed as kind of totally opposite things, right? But ultimately, they're both attempts to understand our world in a deeper way.
Wow.
And so when you combine them, you come away with this really broad perspective on what the world around us looks like and what's happening.
Oh, I love that. Well, we have more wildflowers out here to experience, but I just want to note again, I mean, I know you haven't been here long, and you made this beautiful illustration, I don't know, 10 minutes or something, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be hugely time consuming.
No, and it doesn't have to be good either, you know, like really though, it doesn't have to be good.
You can still get the benefits.
Yes,
from
absolutely.
Just doing it. Yeah, from doing it.
Yeah, and
Excellent.
If nothing else, it's a beautiful way to spend an afternoon.
For sure. Well, let's go see what we find next. One of the other wildflowers I love that comes out this time of year out here at Rock Point is large-flowered bellwort. I actually sort of wait for it to come out because it isn't the earliest one. You know, not quite as early as bloodroot or hepatica, but it does also indicate that the bedrock here has calcium carbonate, or there's some other thing enriching the soil, you know, whether it's just nutrients migrating down slope. I just love the way the flower just twists and looks kind of like I don't know, like a firework or something. It's a beautiful flower, pollinated by different kinds of bees. You know, queen bumblebees are the ones that are some of the earliest because they overwinter, but there are other pollinators of this flower. But the leaves are sometimes what really catches my eye. What do you notice about the leaves?
Yeah, I mean, you can see there's a little water droplet just collecting here, and
like there's a little cup at the base.
Exactly, and I had seen this flower in the wild, I had photographed it, but it wasn't until I drew it that I actually noticed this distinct feature, which is that the stem of the flower seems to go straight through the leaf, and this is a feature called a perfoliate leaf. It's really unique, and it's a great way to ID this plant.
Yes, because early on you might mistake it for wild oats or some of its close relatives, but if you look at the leaf and the stem is piercing it, you know you have large flower bellwort.
Yeah, they're like little white worms in the summer.
Oh,
a million times.
That thing
a million
blew my
times.
mind. Oh, that is so cool. This is an incredible patch of trout lily, isn't it?
Beautiful.
I love it when they've gotten enough sun that the petals just open up.
Yeah.
Just kind of curve back on themselves. Oh, these have the rusty colored anthers.
Uh-huh.
Do you see any in there that are yellow? No, these are all
rusty.
So you know these pollen bearing parts come in it's sort of like being a redhead or a blonde. You know, they come in a kind of rusty red color, but sometimes they're yellow, which is striking. The other thing that people often ask me that is related to trout lily, and I know you know this, Lorna, because we've talked about it, is sometimes when you're out in the summer and you're walking and you see this white thing sort of snaking up out of the ground and back into the ground. It's called a stolon.
Yes.
And what is its purpose?
That is largely how the trout lily spreads. They do reproduce sexually as well, but they're not very successful that way. So the reason you see these huge patches is because they're spreading using these stolons that come out of the ground, and then they go into the ground and produce a new plant where they enter.
That is just awesome. And this looks so well established, because I know it takes several years for them to bloom once they get started. And so these individual, well, it might be one big individual, but each flower, they're 7 years old.
Yeah,
or more,
at least
possibly?
7 years probably.
Yeah. The other thing about woodland wildflowers is once they're gone from the woods, of course this place is rocky, so there wasn't plowed, but if it were a plowed, forested landscape, and if these wildflowers are killed, in the process of cultivating the land, it takes a long time for them to come back. Mm-hmm. A lot of them, we'll talk about this more later, but a lot of them are dispersed by ants and other things that don't travel long distances, or just fall down near the flower.
Yeah, these ones are notoriously hard to propagate, so we really have to preserve what we have here.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see what we see next. The whole oak came down, didn't it?
Yeah, that was back in the fall. Yeah, so Lorna, I actually missed this flower out here last year, and I was really excited a few days ago to find it growing here, the Dutchman's breeches. Yeah, and I really love kind of taking a close look at it and seeing how it looks just like those short pants that people used to wear centuries ago. And yeah, I wasn't at all surprised to find it here on these really rich Dunham Dolostone cliffs with the calcium that it provides, and you can just really visually see how rich it is with all the moss that's growing on it and the different wildflowers coming out of it here.
Yeah, this is one of the earlier ones, so you can see it's already making these little seed pods. And like many ephemeral wildflowers, this plant seeds are dispersed by ants.
Yeah, and so I decided to open up one of the seed pods here so that we could look at the seeds. And yeah, you can really see well here how the seeds have this nice like fatty coating on them, which is kind of an attractive morsel for the ants to come find the seeds, and they'll carry it often back to where they're living, and they'll consume those fatty elaiosomes and then often deposit the seed into what's kind of like a compost pile where the ants kind of put their debris, and it's a nice rich place for the next flower to grow.
These roots,
yeah,
they just always just capture my imagination. Yeah,
yeah, right.
So sort of like an octopus just kind of sprawled out on the landscape.
Holding it all together.
Yeah, exactly. Or breaking it apart, or both.
Yeah, right.
It's slick.
Yeah, be careful.
I feel like this tree gets hugged about 1 million times a year.
You see it polished off.
So Lorna, earlier you were drawing the large flower trillium, and now we've walked through these woods at Rock Point, and we're down at the lake. And I kind of wanted to show people your finished drawings of some of the wildflowers. You do such beautiful work, and I remember reaching out to you to ask you to draw a guide that shows sort of the earlier woodland spring wildflowers and the slightly later ones. And It's been such a useful thing for Vermont Master Naturalists, and they love using it. They love to get it. It's like a gift. Some people frame it, I have to tell you,
Oh.
because it's, you know, it's beautiful two-sided illustrations of the flowers that are right here. Like, where did you go to find these flowers? Like, what was your inspiration?
I mean, I went all over sites in the Burlington area, but a lot of them were right here and in Arms Forest.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, the whole process was a gift to me too, because it allowed me to really hone in and learn each of these flowers, and not only learn their parts, but figure out what time of year they come up and kind of see the sequence of how they rise in the spring.
So it ended up being kind of a study of phenology.
Yes.
Like, how do things unfurl in the landscape over time? And it's always, I love spring. I know some people in Vermont talk about mud season, and there's like not a lot of enthusiasm for some of the very late winter, you know, early spring weeks. But I just love seeing spring arrive in the Champlain Valley where I live. And I noticed you said that you spent time at Rock Point and in Arms Forest, which is adjacent to Rock Point, closer to North Ave. Really part of the green heart of Burlington, these two landscapes, these two forests that also connect down to the Intervale. But one thing they have in common is this Dunham dolostone, which we're about to talk about. And this dolostone, which is rich in calcium carbonate, outcrops in the landscape. And around those rocky outcrops is where you tend to find the spring ephemerals and the spring woodland wildflowers, you know, in abundance.
Yeah, and you can see almost all of the flowers on both sides. Not quite all of them, but almost all of them between Rock Point and Arms Forest.
So we have like the who's who of the woodland wildflowers right near us at this moment.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Woo. Let's go see the Thrust Fault. Wow, Tyler.
Yeah.
I never get tired of looking at this.
Yeah.
It's, you know, we're here at the Champlain Thrust Fault. It runs way south of us and north of us, but it shows up right here at the Earth's surface, which is why it's such a great place to tell geology stories.
Yeah, yeah, and there's so much story to tell here, but I always, when I come down here with folks, I like to kind of, yeah, just take a moment before we get into all of that and really just appreciate the striking feature that we're looking at.
Yeah, I find when I bring groups here, they'll just scatter out along the beach and just sit down, you know, and just take it in. It has a holy feel to it, you know, like it's a place of reverence.
Yeah,
I think
it really does.
And I think it has through time for people.
Yeah, you can imagine people coming here even thousands of years ago and having the same, even without knowing all the stories, having the same experience of awe.
So tell me, Tyler, a little bit about this place. I want to say as a lead-in that I recently talked to a Vermont Master Naturalist, and she said, so the wildflowers are here because of an ancient ocean. And I thought, what a great connection, you know, to think about the deep time, you know, that brings us forward to these very fleeting wildflowers and just how that's expressed out here at Rock Point.
That's right, yeah, and so I think, you know, when we sit out here and just kind of appreciate what's going on, it's really evident with these two layers of rock that they have kind of different histories that have kind of connected in this place in time. And thanks to some more modern scientific techniques, we know that the rock sitting on top here, the orange rock, is a good bit older than the rock underneath it, which is a little bit counter to how we might imagine sediments kind of settling and older rock being underneath.
So if you went to the Grand Canyon, as you went down in the canyon, you'd be going back in time.
Exactly.
You get into older and older rock. But here, that's not what's going on.
That's right, yeah, the time is kind of flipped here. And so the question of how that came to be really brings us back in time over 500 million years ago.
Cool. So tell me about it.
Yeah, and so I have these kind of maps here that people have created to represent what the Earth looked like at different points in its history. And so this is around 565 million years ago. And so if we look on this map, we have the continents in much different places. And you can see, you know, what will become Vermont is sort of in this shallow tropical ocean floor
It's
here.
wild. So we're in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, we're way below the
Here's
equator, but the Earth is much warmer at this point. So even though we're well south of the equator, it's still a very warm ocean where kind of Vermont is sitting in this ocean floor, known as the Iapetus Ocean at this time.
And Laurentia is the old North American continent
Right.
at this time. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and so if you imagine this kind of shallow ocean floor, there's a lot of sort of different sediments being deposited at different times in different places. And so some areas you might have sands building up that could become like a sandstone. You might have muds kind of depositing that could become like a shale that we see here. And we also have ocean life happening. At this time in Earth's history, it's a really exciting time. Known as the Cambrian explosion, where a whole bunch of different species of life are kind of coming onto the scene. And Vermont and the Northeast here in this ocean floor are kind of at an epicenter of life sort of blooming.
And we have an example of that north of us.
Yes.
At Isle Motte, there's actually the earliest and oldest reef
Yes.
preserved, up there that humans have found anyway.
Right,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's sort of like different kinds of rock, but it's all very similar, like ocean floor, different sediments in the same area. Yeah, and so this Dunham Dolostone, the orange type of limestone that we have on top, rather than being like mud or sands, is actually the remains of old like coral and ocean life. So really calcium-rich materials like shells building up over time in the ocean floor and just kind of settling and over time starting to harden. And so that's sort of as things are building up here. And then over time, as we move forward a bit in time, so we're going to zoom forward, another almost 100 million years, you can see the continents have shifted around a little bit. We're getting closer to the equator. Some volcanoes have popped up off the side of the continent and are moving toward the continent there. And so all these sediments that were kind of built up in this ocean floor are starting to move around.
And they're getting sort of bulldozed
Right, yeah.
onto the old North American continent.
That's right, yeah. So these volcanoes, they're headed toward the continent, and something big is about to happen. And if we go forward another couple 100 million years here, we get toward what many people know as Pangaea, which is a supercontinent where all these landforms came together. And so we remember those volcanoes, and we have continents from the east have crashed into North America. And so all of this sediment that was built up on the ocean floor basically got bulldozed and tacked on to the side of the continent. And that's a really dramatic, chaotic environment where these sediments are getting squeezed together, heated up, tossed around, misplaced in different areas.
And in Vermont, that there happened in two big events. One created the Green Mountains and kind of closed western Vermont. And then there was another period where rock was being deposited in a trough, which is eastern Vermont, and those rocks are younger, so there was a second collision.
Yeah, and so I think we have those volcanoes that popped up and they kind of crashed in, and then we have the Pangaea forming, which is like another collision that happened.
And Vermont is basically divided in half by those two collisions. It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
Like right in Montpelier, you can look at the Green Mountain Schist, which is from the Taconic orogeny, and then you can look at the Waits River Formation, which is the Acadian orogeny. So
Yeah.
It's just really fascinating.
Yeah, and it's neat if you kind of look at, a map. This is sort of a map of the bedrock of the eastern U.S., and different colors represent different kinds of rock. And so you can really get a visual here of this kind of crumpling that was happening as this got tacked on to the eastern side of the North American continent. And that's when kind of the Appalachian Mountains were forming, and all that same events, this yellow orangish Dunham Dolostone, older rock that was deeper down in the earth where it formed, it kind of, pieces of it broke off and got pushed and slid up on top of this younger rock, the Iberville Shale here. And it actually moved, somewhere between 30 and 80 miles into this place. And this seam that we're looking at between these two pieces of rock, this thrust fault, heads all the way up into southern Quebec and down into the Catskills, about 200 miles long. But it only is visible at the surface right in this place here. So really special that we get to see it here.
Yeah, I'm glad that I mean, the point that you're making, that thrust faults exist on the Earth's surface and under the Earth's surface, but rarely right where they're visible to
Yeah,
us.
it's all over the place.
Yeah.
We can see here.
Yeah, but that's so cool. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this map. So we've looked at these maps that show the north-south striping from when the continents collided and just kind of accordioned all this ocean bottom material onto the North American continent. But you can also see in this map, which is the ecological classifications of Vermont bedrock, that if you just look at the blue, you're looking at the ones that have a lot of calcium carbonate in them. So sometimes we shorthand that and say calcium, but we're really talking about calcium carbonate that causes a buffering of the soil and more availability of the nutrients. You know, so
and that was coming from the ocean life, right? The calcium carbonate.
Exactly. Yeah, and also I think they've shown that some of it was coming out chemically. It was precipitating out in those warm, shallow oceans. So I just want to show that reaction of the one way that we can tell quartz, which is also white, from calcite, which is the calcium carbonate, is just if you can get a rock to fizz, and you know this trick.
Yeah, and so you have hydrochloric acid there.
Yes, exactly, and it's causing CO2, off-gassing CO2 in those bubbles, and kind of forming calcium chloride, a salt, and some water. But it's taking this very basic element, CaCO3, and the rain will convert it into something else, and it makes all the nutrients in the soil more available, not just the calcium. So that's the wildflowers and some of the natural communities that we'll see.
Yeah, and so these patterns of different bedrock are kind of tools we can use to see what sorts of communities might grow on the landscape based on what nutrients are available to them.
Yes, that can help us look for wildflowers.
Yeah.
And also just the diversity of life that we see in the Champlain Valley is partly due to all the different kinds of ocean sediments that got coupled up together. Like you said, that whole continuum from sand that becomes sandstone to kind of, you know, calcareous rocks like the dolostone and the limestone.
Yeah.
And even the shales. Well, let's go find Lorna. I think we should climb up on this cliff and get a look at this natural
kind of see
communities,
what this is giving way to. Yeah.
Exactly. Tyler, these steps are awesome.
Yeah.
I know Timber and Stone did a lot of work to put them in. I love how they used that local rock along the edges, and then they went and got Green Mountain schist for the tread because they break nice and flat, and they're more resistant. But I used to come out here, Tyler, and you remember the trail used to go over there, and it was like taking your life in your hands to get down.
I wasn't even here at that point.
I once thought I was going to have a student fall on me doing that part of the trail.
Oh, wow.
But this has been a big improvement. So Tyler, I'm sure you know this, but this stone and dolostone that lines the staircase came from a rock pile over there that used to be from a school.
That's right, yeah, the Vermont Episcopal Institute used to sit out there in the field and burned down in 1979.
And then they bulldozed it into the woods, and Timber and Stone found the rock pile,
That's right.
That's so cool.
And put it to use out here.
And it was quarried near here, over in Arms Forest.
Yes.
So it's like a full circle kind of thing. Lorna, we came up from the beach where we learned about the geology and the thrust fault and the, Iberville shale and the Dunham dolomite or dolostone and the formula for if you drip HCl on CO3. So this just sort of tells the story of what's below us. And this illustrator, Rosemary Moscow, do you know her comic strip?
I love her comic strip.
She does some beautiful things. Really worth checking Rosemary out online. Bird and Moon. This was when she was a student, so going on 20 years ago.
Wow.
And here is her illustration then as we come up into the natural community of what's growing on this thrust fault. So first of all, it's called the Limestone Bluff Cedar Pine Forest, but can you remind us what it means to when you talk about a natural community?
Yeah, a natural community is essentially a way of categorizing an ecosystem. So it tells you everything that's in this area, all the organisms, but also all of the inorganic things like the bedrock and how that influences what's here. And on top of that, the natural processes that affect it all.
Wow.
Yes.
And you're digging deep into this because you're on a quest.
Yes, I am currently on a quest to visit every natural community in Vermont, or at least all of the ones listed in this book, which is
Wetland, Woodland, Wildland.
Wetland, Woodland, Wildland.
The Bible of natural communities that we're so lucky to have in Vermont.
Absolutely.
And this one is in it. So can you tell us
yes.
a little more about?
This is a really special one. This, like you said, this is the limestone bluff cedar pine forest. And you see it on calcareous cliffs like this. I mean, it can be on limestone or dolostone. Right now, like you said, we're on the dolostone. And it's significant partially because we have these really interesting formations of white cedar. And you don't see many other or any other trees kind of along the cliff's edge here. And that's because they have special adaptations that allow them to survive these harsh conditions. Partially, they grow very, very slowly. And so they're able to kind of slowly adapt to what's happening around them. And their root systems are opportunistic, so they can, you might see them in a swamp and they will adapt to that setting, but equally well, they're able to spread their roots out really far.
All across the trail here, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're one of the only trees that can really survive here.
And some of the natural processes, the forces that are affecting them are ice loading.
Yes,
wind,
ice storms, wind.
Shallow soils.
Yes.
Like they're grafting to each other and really holding on tight to the cliff and the rocks and
yes.
each other.
Another plant in this natural community, which is relevant to the wildflowers, is the red columbine. And that's another one that does really well on these super thin to bedrock soils. It's kind of remarkable when you think about it.
And there are a number of rare plants out here, like the Seneca snakeroot, I know grows nearby. And,
yes. If you look in this book, you can see all of these incredible rare plants and rare animals. And this is also one of the reasons it's really important to study these natural communities and preserve them, is that once this natural community is gone, it's not just the trees that you see here, it's all of these organisms that make their home here that are also imperiled.
It's the life it supports.
Yeah.
And this limestone bluff cedar pine forest runs up into Naquette Bay and down into Kingsland Bay, but it's in a pretty narrow band.
Yes.
And you're right, the white cedar cling really tightly to the edge, but there are other species in here, the pine, red pine, white pine to some extent, some of the hickories. There are other things mixed into this forest, but it's a narrow band.
Yeah.
You transition pretty quickly into another forest as you walk away from the cliff's edge.
Yeah, so it's really important to stay on the trail here because even just a little bit off of the trail and you might unknowingly be trampling plants. Yeah.
And in fact, this trail was rerouted away from the cliff's edge to kind of give this natural community in this location a little more ability to recover and thrive into the future. And I know there's an illustration here. Can you show it to us?
Yes.
Because Libby Davidson, beautiful illustrator, I think she sat right here where we are and drew this picture. So we've been sort of talking about art and science and telling stories and understanding places and how they can work together to make that possible.
Absolutely.
Tyler, when I stand here on this bluff, I think of a couple of things that are relevant. We haven't talked a lot about wildlife, so I do think about the peregrines that nest along these cliffs, and I've seen the young ones get raised, right near this location. And
fluffy birds.
Fluffy white that turn into full-grown, peregrines in just a few weeks. It's amazing how fast it happens. Ravens, one of the few places in Burlington I routinely hear and see ravens also like nesting in these cliffy environments. So I think of wildlife, I think of mink along the lake shore.
Yes.
I know you've seen them run right along the
Right in the thrust fault.
contact
Yeah.
of the thrust fault. You know, it's a beautiful place. Lots of foxes denning around here nearby, coyotes. You know, it's a rich spot for wildlife. And also, I think as I look across the basin, I think of a time back in history where it was full of ice. You know, I feel like that's another era in the things that have helped shape this landscape. So what do you think of when you think about the Ice Age as it relates to Rock Point?
Yeah. So before all these, you know, things that are exposed now that we're talking about, all of this was covered in ice for a long time, and it's wild to imagine ice like a mile to a mile and a half above our heads. It's kind of hard to conceptualize that amount of space and the amount of weight on this landscape from that ice. And then, yeah, as that ice started to melt in this area around 13,000 years ago, that's a lot of water on this landscape that is starting to collect and collecting here in the Lake Champlain Basin and above our heads, up to around 600 feet, you know, above where we're at.
That was a freshwater in front of the Glacier Lake.
Yes.
That filled the Champlain Valley.
Yeah.
You know, and kind of up into the Underhill area, and you know, places that were 625 feet above sea level. You know, so Lake Vermont.
Right, Lake Vermont, yeah. And right now, Lake Champlain is draining out to the north, but there was still ice up there at that time, so it couldn't leave and go out to the ocean, and so it's all collecting here.
So it collects here, turbulent, cold.
Yes.
You know, not much life in it.
Yeah, people
Fresh
aren't
water.
here.
People aren't here. The water's draining south through the Hudson Valley.
Yeah.
And then the ice melted past the current sill of you know, Lake Champlain, but the land was pressed down low enough that the Atlantic Ocean flowed in here.
Yes, yeah, and it happened very quickly. Like you know, the lake is dammed, and then, you know, the ice melts just enough that water, you know, within a matter of a day or days just rushes out to the ocean. And yeah, like you said, it was all compressed enough that it was below sea level, and so yeah, seawater was actually coming into this basin.
Yeah, and so it flowed in, and then and in our area, the edge of that Champlain Sea, it was an arm of the Champlain Sea, which went all the way up into Canada.
Yes,
and over
yeah,
into
very
northern
big.
New York.
Yeah,
big, and we were just one arm of it.
Yeah, but it was lower here than Lake Vermont. It was, you know, just a few hundred feet.
It was about 325 feet. So the edge of it actually was kind of in Williston area. But that did not leave quickly. That left slowly as the land rebounded from under. So the Winooski River in this area was depositing this giant delta into the Champlain Sea.
Right.
And I know there are parts of Rock Point that are quite sandy.
Yes.
I mean, we've been studying the limestone part, but the dolostone, but there are other parts that are under
just
deep
up over
sand.
that way.
Yeah, and you can see where the foxes have dug their dens.
Yeah.
And, you know, it influences
the
landscape. That sea then was hospitable. People had followed the glaciers
as the glaciers melted, heading into the area.
Yeah, and so
almost about right in step with it, as far as we know.
So, so there were people living here when the cold breath of the glaciers was still blowing on them.
Yes.
You know, and really.
Yeah, and the mammoths and
exactly, giant animals that were here. So that's kind of tying that connection to the wildlife that lives here now, and the history. People are really the largest mammal that has been in both those eras. That's sort of the landscape that is post-glacial, and then all the way to today. Everything, all the other big animals have come and gone.
Yeah, gone extinct.
Gone extinct, or just weren't, you know, in the area at that time.
Right.
It's kind of fascinating to think about how adaptable the ancestral Abenaki were to be able to hunt, you know, mammoths with stone spears and survive in small hunting groups when it was tundra, you know, when it was like cold, and there were little willows and birches like what you'd find in the far north now here.
Right.
You know, and then it went through a series of
Yeah.
warming periods, the boreal forest,
Yeah.
and then suddenly the temperate forest, not suddenly, but over time. It's just fascinating.
Yeah,
to me.
and all the way up until like Abenaki people being here from the time the glaciers are receding all the way up until the present.
They
Yeah.
think it's one of the longest continuous occupation
Yeah.
of a landscape
Yeah,
by a
like not
people.
having the changing
No.
cultures and
Yeah.
yeah, and that adaptability to like hunting mammoths to then agriculture in the Winooski Valley and
It's just amazing to think about,
Mhm.
like all that's happened here and
Yes.
that people have adapted to through today.
yeah, and we don't know tons about what people are doing specific, like Abenaki people doing specifically on this landscape at Rock Point, but there are some you know, some spear points and other things have been found kind of on the beaches, and so you can sort of imagine
From the more paleo period.
yes,
The very, very early
a little, yeah,
occupation. You know?
right. Well, yeah, and then kind of a little bit more recent as people were, you know, starting to develop agriculture
Yeah.
over on like in the intervale, and so you can sort of imagine people kind of coming up this way to fish or
Right. And you find pot shards and people were storing.
yes, yeah, have
agricultural
found some pottery out here
And
too.
we know people were sugaring, making maple
Yes.
syrup and sugar to sweeten things. And you know, they through that period of 13,000 years, you went from virtually no trees to like spruces and firs and, you know, boreal trees, and then into the woodlands that we know more today. In fact, they were a little warmer at one point. But people needed wood to have some of the technologies that they developed, like snowshoes and baskets. And
Yes.
it's just so interesting to watch the forest and the people evolving together, you know, to create culture
Yeah.
in interesting ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the next thing we want to talk about, and we're going to go find Kelly Kimball, the
Yes.
director of Rock Point, to sort of talk about where we are in that arc of humans on the Rock Point landscape,
Yeah.
and sort of what the vision is.
Yeah,
today.
and we'll kind of jump toward the like Episcopal history on this landscape and kind of
Right.
the colonial period
So,
where
settlement.
settlement arrives and in the 1800s where the Episcopal Church kind of becomes present on this landscape and how that kind of takes us
Yeah.
to where we are now.
And while I think there's a lot of hope and vision for the future, there was a very disruptive and brutal and deadly time.
Yeah,
for the
it
people who lived here.
wasn't just handed over from the Abenaki to
no.
you know, the Europeans or the church. Or,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, let's go talk to Kelly
Okay.
and think about the future.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited that Kelly's going to come out and join us for a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
Just wanted to hear her thoughts on what's happening at Rock Point today and kind of the vision for the future. Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Alicia.
Thanks for coming to join us. So
It's
nice
good to
see
see you. Good to see you
We've
too.
been loving the wildflowers.
Hey,
Hey, Kelly.
Hey. Hey, Lorna. Hi. Good to see you too.
We've been out and about looking at wildflowers, looking at geology.
That's great.
Yeah. What else have we done today?
Yeah, so we've just been kind of walking around, tracking the story of this place over time, and checking out some wildflowers. We stopped and looked at the Thrust Fault and told the Bedrock story, and then we were just kind of talking about the glacial history and how people kind of arrived in step with the glaciers, and we're just kind of touching on the Episcopal history. And
Oh, great.
We've come here, and one of the things I love about Rock Point is I see it referred to in some of the signage and in some of the literature as a sanctuary.
That's
As
right.
It's truly a sanctuary for people, for plants, for animals.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I feel that when I'm out here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that. And I think that, you know, historically this has been a place for decades that was really used primarily for these, for the folks in the Episcopal Church, for the parishes, and their children came to the summer camps here, and it's been this deeply spiritual, sacred place for that community for a long time. And I think it was with a lot of generosity of spirit and this deep faith that that community decided to open this space up to the broader Burlington community, to the general public, with this, really this faith that other people would recognize the sacredness of this space and treat it as the sanctuary that it is. And so we're in the early days of that experiment, and we feel like it's working. People are showing up and sort of experiencing this place as a really sacred place.
We definitely we saw a geology field trip out here.
Yeah.
We saw people enjoying wildflowers.
Yeah.
It is such a beautiful location and such a treasure for Burlington
Yeah.
and other visitors to the area, you know, to be able to come here.
So I think what's interesting and exciting about Rock Point is there are so many different ways to be here on the land. You know, I think a lot of, when we think about sort of connecting to the natural world, a lot of the time I think what people picture is you get in your car and you drive the mountains and you do like a rigorous hike, or you're doing some kind of, that's often the way that a lot of people think about connecting to the natural world. Here at Rock Point, I think there's so many different invitations to be here. There's ways to connect spiritually, either through some organized offerings or just independently. There's educational programs and camps for kids where they can be wild and running around in the woods. There's community programs like our Community Maple program, or where you can sort of do hard work with and build, you know, community and camaraderie with others while you're doing that. And so it's just, there's a lot of ways to figure out kind of what sparks your interest, what sparks your passion, what moves your spirit here at Rock Point. And the fact that it's located here right in the city, it's so accessible. There's so many ways to find that about yourself here at Rock Point.
So Tyler, earlier you were telling me about the Episcopal history on this property, and you've managed to transition from that to this more public access to the land. And how are you making that work on the property?
Yeah, so over time, as the kind of Episcopal presence on the land has shifted in ways, at some point they established a board to manage the property that's now called Rock Point Commons. And so over time that mission has transitioned into one of managing the land for public access and different kind of partner programs that are out here. This current iteration has been just evolving over the past few years and is really about this transition into welcoming the public in and really trying to help people connect with what is special about this place and the different things we've been talking about today. And yeah, so our mission now is to build community here on the landscape around spirituality, education, and environmental stewardship. And so we partner with other organizations that host programs on the land, but then we've also been working on developing some of our own. And so Reading Rock Point, as we talked about earlier, kind of having the year-long naturalist class as a staple for connecting people to the land. There's also a long agricultural history out here, and so we have different pockets of homesteading projects and gardens and maple sugaring. And so we're really inviting our neighbors to come participate in that and share in the harvest as more of a connecting with each other in the land as opposed to making a product and selling it.
Nice. I love that. And you've both been evolving this idea, creating this idea of a nature and spirituality center out here. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, so the Rock Point Center for Nature and Spirituality is an idea that Tyler and I had about a year ago when we were thinking about what we should do with this space down at the Camping Conference Center complex. So I think, Alicia, as you know, part of that complex is now the home of the Eagle Bay Academy. That is the Burlington School District's alternative high school program, which we're thrilled about. But that leaves this separate building that's traditionally served as a chapel for the diocese here on the property. And we thought it would be a wonderful use of this building to invite people in who are hiking, who are on the property, to come in and have some tea, warm up, and learn a little bit more about where they are. So the idea is that one half of the space is more the scientific background, like the natural history of Rock Point. So some information on the geological wonder of the Thrust Fault, and we have some generous donations or loans from UVM of native species, taxidermied native species from the property that will be on these display cases and other sort of invitations, field guides and binoculars and all kinds of things to help people deepen their experience from that more like scientific natural history perspective. But then people will also be invited to go into the chapel space, and we see this sort of as a place for reflection, for meditation, for prayer, and really to sort of honor and connect with the spiritual side of this sanctuary. So that will be something that's open to the public, and we hope people will come in and join that. It's a humble space, but I think it's going to be really inviting and just a really nice way to enhance your visit here.
And I think one of the things you touched on about sort of the scientific way of knowing the landscape, the spiritual way of knowing the landscape, a lot today we've been talking about building these bridges between art and science, between earth science and life sciences. How do you create a holistic feel to people's understanding of a place and their connection to it? So I love that part. And you've also talked to me earlier about how you see this phase in Rock Point's long history. It's 500 million year history as a place on planet Earth. We're in an experimental phase. Can you tell me a little more about this experiment, this grand experiment?
Yeah, so when I think about the decision that the diocese made as owned this property for centuries now at this point, to open this up to the public, that took, I think, an enormous spirit of generosity and an enormous faith in the community that if you open this up for public access, people are going to come in here and they are going to continue to see this as a sanctuary and to treat it as this really sacred place. And I think what we're seeing is that when people come here, they feel that. There's just something about this place. It's so ancient, it's so beautiful, and there's such a special spirit of community here. I think people tap into that. And so far, we're seeing really promising results on this experiment. And I do think, Alicia, you were saying this sort of melding the spiritual and the scientific connection to the natural world. But I think the more people learn about this, sort of what we know about the science, there's something that is really spiritually moving about that. I know Tyler's reading Rock Point class. When you learn about these natural communities, when you learn about how trees communicate with each other, when you learn about how animals adapt and how the natural world works, there's such a mystery to it, and there's such a sense of something spiritual to it that I think one arm really reinforces the other. And that's, what we hope to do with this space is to provide a place for people to explore that.
Awesome. So I'm hearing that as someone who's a regular visitor, some things I can do and could do are to be aware.
Yes.
Stay on the trails.
Yes.
Be gentle with the land, treat it properly, take my trash out, and also donate money. You can, you can give toward the cause.
That's right.
Because we are the public now using this landscape.
That's right. That's the other piece of faith here that came here, because when you need to have staff and you need to have these, educational and outreach programs. That the end game for that ultimately really is keeping this place safe for generations to come, while inviting people to come in and experience this. And we do need the support of the community in order to do that effectively. So that's exactly right. We want people to come. There's so many ways to contribute and give and support this place as a volunteer, as a responsible visitor and steward of the land, leashing your dog, all of these things that we invite people to do when they're here, and also for those who are able to provide some financial support.
And you said something beautifully a few minutes ago as we were chatting and walking to the outdoor chapel about the long vision of the health of this landscape and just what the hope is. Like, you'll feel like you succeed in this experiment.
For me, that's really the most critical piece of this, right? Because that's something that you can't undo once you've misstepped. So I see us, our team, as being at this really critical point in Rock Point's ancient history of making sure that as we transition into this next phase of Rock Point, we're doing so in a way that really preserves these natural spaces.
Lorna, come over here. Aw. Thank you all for spending the day out here at Rock Point with me. I had the best time looking at wildflowers, looking at geology, learning about the vision for the future of Rock Point. I feel so grateful you all work to help educate people and about this is a sanctuary, just about how to be on this land and be aware of the animals and the plants and the other things that share it. So really grateful for that and glad that it's in your hands.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing what you know with all of us and bringing us together.
Real,
Thank you.
here.
real good day.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us, and join us next time. We'll have another adventure.